And welcome to The Candidates, a four-part presidential town hall series brought to you by Daria Media and the Nigerian Television Authority with the support of the MacArthur Foundation. These town halls represent an opportunity for you to get to know the candidates who want your votes so they can lead Nigeria for the next 4 years. We are live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, on Television Continental TVC, and on Wazobia TV. You can hear this program on Radio Nigeria stations across the country, and we're streaming live online at dtv.media and nta.ng live. Today, we begin with the candidates of the Young Progressives Party, the YPP. Mr. Kingsley Moghalu is the party's presidential candidate. He was born in Lagos in 1963, studied law at the University of Nigeria in Nsukka, and was admitted to the Nigerian bar in 1987. He obtained a master's degree in international relations at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy in 1992 and joined the United Nations in the same year. He rose to become a director and worked at the UN headquarters in New York and also in Cambodia, Croatia, Tanzania, and Switzerland. At the United Nations, he helped design a comprehensive risk management system for the $20 billion Global Fund. He was appointed Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria by the late President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua in 2009. His bid to run for the presidency is the first time he will take part in active politics. His running mate is Mrs. Getso, 37, from Kano State. She's a political activist and an entrepreneur. She co-founded the National Progressive Movement, NPM. Her political pedigree includes the fact that she's the daughter of a former senator of the National Party of Nigeria, NPN, in the 1980s, Malam Abdullahi Giwa Getso. She was the deputy national chairman of her party, the Young Progressives Party, prior to her selection as vice presidential candidate. Welcome to the candidates, Mr. Moghalu and Mrs. Getso.
Thank you.
Now, with us tonight are also members of the diplomatic corps, civil society, political parties, and of course citizens who have questions for our candidates. I too will have some questions, but as important are also the questions that are coming from those of you watching us at home. So, if you want to participate, here is how to do it. Send your questions on any of the social media handles that are on your screen. Don't forget to use the hashtag #NGTheCandidates. Otherwise, your questions may get lost. Again, remember to tell your friends and family in the diaspora that they can watch this program online. We are streaming live on dtv.media and nta.ng live. Now, let's get started. Mr. Moghalu and Ms. Getso, thank you again for agreeing to take part in the candidates.
Thank you.
You want to lead Nigeria.
Yeah.
Why should citizens elect you to run the affairs of this country for the next 4 years?
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Kadria. We think that the time has come for Nigeria to have transformational and effective and competent leadership, which it has not had for many, many years. The challenges of the 21st century call for a very different type of leadership from the type that Nigeria has had over the past 20 years. We need to take our place in the 21st century. Nigeria's youth make up over 50% of the voting population. So this is an election about their future. And so their future cannot be best protected by people who do not understand their needs, people who do not understand the way they think, people who don't understand the requirements of managing modern economies in the 21st century. That is what we bring to the table. Our ticket of the Kingsley Moghalu Getso presidency from 2019, hopefully, will make Nigeria a modern nation.
Now, you've talked about the issue of economics here and the fact that Nigerians are, so we kind of are clear, because you were a former CBN governor, that you do have some economic background.
Sure.
But your running mate, I'd like to hear a little bit more from her. about what she sees as the issues around the economy, particularly because our constitution, as you know, gives the vice president a role as the head of the National Economic Council. So if you were to win elections, she would, have to lead in that particular capacity. So I'd like to hear from her.
Nigerian situation is a well-known situation to everyone, especially people that have been active in politics. I personally, what gave me the passion to join politics is initially, it's not what the normal thinking of today's politician, because many of us see politics as something, as a kind of place to make money. So to be candid, the drive is the initial thing that even leads somebody to what is doing. So to be candid, my drive and my passion for the love of my nation is what drives me and brought me to where I'm standing today. So when you come to economy, my background, I'm a banking and finance student, and I've been an entrepreneur from a very, very tender age. So I'm very sure, and with what Prof already have in ground for Nigeria, I will definitely meet up and I will give Nigerians what they deserve in line with what he has already designed, because I am only dreaming along with him.
Okay. Now, I'd like to make this as interactive as possible. So I'm going to dive in straight away into trying to get members of the public to talk. And since we've started talking about the economy, I think we will stick to the economy for this particular section. Jubril Ahmed Na'Allah has a question on the economy. Is he around? Jubril Ahmed Na'Allah? He didn't come. Okay, no problem. We'll put the question to you anyway because he sent it in. So he sent a question to say, how do you plan to create jobs to reduce unemployment?
Yeah. The jobs problem, the way my government will break the back of that problem is as follows. First of all, we have to create the philosophical foundation for a productive economy. An economy that is not productive, that relies on oil rents, cannot create jobs. So we're going to move the economy to innovation, to be an innovation-driven economy where inventions and new ways of doing things become the new driving force of the economy. That will create jobs. So how? Specifically, yes. When people invent, and there are many inventions in Nigeria today, none of which has seen the light of day in terms of you're finding them on the shelf in the marketplace. But in America, in Japan, in China, what you see being sold as economic transactions are innovations. That's what we will bring in Nigeria. When people invent things, we will enable them by creating the necessary policy environment for the commercialization of new inventions to be pipelined into the market. We will also back it up with access to finance for new and young entrepreneurs through a 1 trillion naira venture capital fund. Access to finance is a very big problem in Nigeria, which my administration will address directly. And the reason it's a problem is because there is too much reliance on credit. And credit in this country is difficult for two reasons. It's either you don't have the collateral to get it, or if you get it, the interest rate is too high. So we're going to be coming with equity capital, which is not a loan that you have to repay. It's an investment to help you start a new business, and that new business will create jobs for many people. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
First question I'd like to ask is, the contribution that the government is going to make of 500 billion,
yes.
Where are you going to get that money? Yes. We're already hearing that resources are limited.
Yes.
So where is the 500 billion that is the government's contribution coming from?
Very good. There are two main ways that we will get the money from. First of all, is that we're going to be abolishing any subsidies for petroleum importation in this country. That will save the government between 600 billion naira to 1 trillion naira every year, which is a waste that's currently going on. So that's a clear saving. Two, we're going to take the 500 billion naira social intervention fund and turn it around. Right now, that fund is recycling poverty. You are giving a man fish or pretending to be giving him fish instead of teaching him how to fish. So we're going to turn that fund into a productive fund that creates wealth in this economy. So these are part of the ways that the 500 billion that the government will contribute, the private sector will contribute 500 billion. And already there's so much interest in this idea from venture capital firms around the world.
Now, I am a little bit concerned about hearing that you essentially want to take money from the poorest of the poor to give people who might be considered middle class. And for Uma, for example, that comes from the north, which is seeing a high level of poverty. I'd like to hear directly from you what your thoughts are regarding taking away funding from a program which is basically directed at the poorest of the poor and putting it in a fund that will be accessed by entrepreneurs, people that would be considered by many as privileged.
At these funds, at the present stage we are today, how are these funds, especially in my typical north, how are these funds being, how are the northerners or typical ordinary man in Nigeria benefiting from this fund at this stage we are today? So I think converting those funds into a more productive way will do a lot of good to Nigerians, because the major problem we're having now is not that the funds are not there, just as Prof. Finished saying, the funds are there is just to send them where they should go to. So I'm very sure with such kind of innovative thinking, the funds will definitely go to where they're going to go, and it will be to the benefit of the common man.
May I add, if you don't mind? When you say they're considered privileged, who is privileged? The 20 million unemployed Nigerians are privileged? We're trying to give them jobs.
Yes, but you are talking specifically about targeting entrepreneurs, which is what you said, so that they can generate jobs. And so the question as well, again, is that this is also underpinned by an assumption that the problem we have at the moment is a problem of money, rather than an enabling environment to actually utilize what we already have. I mean, we do have the Sovereign Wealth Fund. Sure. We have the excess crude account. Yeah. So it would appear as if funds have been created before. And the issue is really about how to channel those funds. Yes. Okay.
Let me clarify, please. There are 20 million unemployed people in this country.
A little bit on that 21 million, actually. 20.9 or something like that.
The youth unemployment in this country is 54%. General unemployment is 23%. That is the bottom line. The way to create jobs in modern 21st century economies is through entrepreneurship and through starting small-scale businesses. That has been proven in most capitalist economies around the world. We are practicing capitalism without capital. So my proposal for a 1 trillion naira venture capital fund is not just a fund that will trigger a productive economy of innovation and manufacturing. It's a fund that will create jobs, because and it's aimed mostly at young people who are unemployed, but they may have a bright business idea, but they don't have to take a loan. The fund will invest in their new business. When they start their business, that business will employ 1, 2, 3, 4 people, maybe. As it grows, it will employ more people. If you multiply these kinds of small-scale businesses by the thousands and the hundreds of thousands, you're creating millions of jobs. That's how jobs are created. So that is the logic behind this, because there are 3 requirements of a modern capitalist economy to function well. The first is property rights, the second is innovation, the third is capital. The venture capital fund will bring the sorely needed capital into Nigeria's economic environment that has been lacking. People cannot take bank loans and pay back at 30%. People cannot take bank loans if they're unemployed and have no collateral. This is venture capital. You don't need collateral to access it. Okay. You share the profit with the investing fund. And after the fund has recovered its investment, they will exit, the business is yours. Maybe at that time, it's already a much bigger business than when you started. So the government itself cannot create the jobs that are needed. So when you are giving people a so-called social intervention fund, which the performance is abysmally poor, what is the percentage of that fund that is actually reaching people? You know, it's a different thing to claim things in the media, and we see all the millions of unemployed.
Okay, does it bother you at all that there's an increasing deficit in this country? Essentially, we're spending more than we are earning. And essentially, I think your fund of $1 trillion on the surface looks as if it will be another spending more than we are earning. At least there will be a lag. How much time do you reckon will lapse between the time you get into office, setting up this fund, getting it working, and for us to begin to see the impact?
Certainly, within the 4 years of my administration, the fund would have made a huge impact in the Nigerian economy. It's not going to take more than 6 to 9 months to set it up from entering into office and get it operational. Within a year or two, you'll begin to see a massive impact around the country. Sure.
If you get this fund up and running and you're in government, how many jobs do you think you're going to create within the first year, the second year, the third year?
Nigeria has about 3 million entrants into the job market every year. We anticipate that this fund itself, there are other ways of creating jobs which I can talk about. It's not just the fund. But we anticipate that this fund can create between 1 and 2 million jobs every year, new jobs. Now, agriculture is another place where we're going to go into a lot of investments by the private sector through value chains, not just for cultivation, but for transportation, for storage, for processing, and for exports.
Okay.
The more we invest in these areas, the more jobs are created.
This is, of course, a town hall.
Absolutely.
And so I don't want to dominate this, and I'd like to be able to invite people to start asking the candidates some questions. We have someone in the audience called Kabiru Zubairu Mohammed. Okay, he's not here. Okay, well, there's a gentleman, there's a mic over there. So please, you can stand up, introduce yourself, and then ask your question.
Good evening, sorry. My name is Kabiru Zubairu Mohammed. Okay. My name is Kabiru Zubairu Mohammed. Actually, I'm not going to ask you about the economy. I'm going to ask you about your personality exactly. You are once the deputy governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. As she introduced you, are you willing to publicly declare your asset when you win the presidency? Thank you very much.
Should I address that? Yes. Now, let's understand something about the declaration of assets. The important thing about the declaration of assets is that public officers must declare their assets as required by law. Now, there's something that goes on in this country, that people make all kinds of populist promises, such as the kinds of promises that the present president made when he was coming in, oh, I'll declare this, I'll declare that, and at the end of the day, all sorts of questions arose about whether those assets were declared as publicly as they were presented during the campaigns. What I will tell you is that I will declare my assets as required by law. Now, if I choose to, yes.
What the law requires, so that we're clear about.
Oh yes, the law requires you to declare all your assets, but they are required to be submitted through a process. You fill a form, and everything is verifiable, so that there's a record of the things you owned before you came into public office. That's the whole point.
Will you be amenable to that declaration being made public? Because you know there are people who say we've declared, but we don't want people to know.
No objection. I have no problem with that at all, because in the first place, my most important asset is my intellectual property.
What about your running mate?
It doesn't cross the limit, the expected limits.
Okay. So you are happy for the whole of Nigeria to know how much you own, what you own, how many houses, etc.,
You
etc.
know, just as Prof said, depending on the window it came from. For example, if it is a kind of something that we should just give open, of course we will.
Okay. Now, since they've raised the issue of asset, I might as well ask you, how are you funding your campaign? Because it's not cheap running for public office.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
We are funding our campaign with contributions from many, many well-meaning Nigerians who believe that the time has come for something new, something different, and something bold. And the truth is that there's a big exaggeration about how much funding is needed for a presidential campaign. The APC and the PDP, the politicians, the old recycled politicians, they create the impression that you need 50 billion naira to run a presidential campaign. Our track record tells us that 40 of that 50 billion among the traditional politicians will end up in the private pockets of many politicians, and only 10 may be used.
So we now have an opportunity for
Yes.
for you to educate Nigerians
yeah.
and to, tell us exactly how much it costs to run for the presidency of this country. How much have you spent so
Good
far?
point, good point, good point, good point. What you need under the INEC regulations.
No, I'm not asking you about INEC. I'm asking you how much you've spent so far.
How much I've spent so
running
far?
for office, yes.
Well, I've spent over, I would say, 200 million.
And these are all donations?
Yeah, mostly donations and my own private funds. I'm not a beggar on the street. I have savings, and I have used those savings in a sacrificial manner for the progress of this country. I'm not funded by any godfathers. I'm not funded by any special interests. So I've used my hard-earned money. Everything I own, you can trace it. I have always worked in public life and for some while as a private consultant. So you can trace everything I own.
Now, part of the difficulties we sometimes face when we deal with politicians in this country is that there's an opaqueness to their affairs.
Yes.
And people are left wondering
Yeah.
Who is paying for what. You referenced godfathers.
Yes.
You've said that well-wishers who are tired of the way things are happening in Nigeria are the ones funding your campaign. Would you be willing to publish a register of the people that have contributed to your campaign funds?
If that is required of every candidate, why not?
Okay, but you wouldn't lead and make an example and be the open person and be different from everybody else.
I'm happy to do that. There's no secret to my funding. I mean, people just contribute. Some people drop, 20K. Some people drop 50K. Some people give 100K. So people just give according to their ability. And we've had a lot of these kinds of donations. And I can also share, if necessary, my own savings that I have used in a sacrificial manner. Most people wouldn't do what I have done. I have come into politics to run for the presidency, at great financial risk. I wasn't a wealthy person. Most people who go in are wealthy people, or they're using stolen money from, various political escapades. But that's not what we're doing.
No.
And yet, consider the impact we have made. In the 9 months since I entered politics, today, the YPP and my candidacy is the third force in Nigerian politics today.
Okay. A quick question before we take our first break. You referred to the fact that you didn't think you were wealthy, but both of you, by Nigerian standards, are children of privilege. Your father is a diplomat, I believe.
Was.
Or was a diplomat. Sorry, is he late?
He's late.
Oh, please accept my condolence. Apology, I didn't know that. So. And your dad was a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So both of you cannot be considered, if you like, either working class or people of, a lack of privilege. To what extent do you think your privilege is influencing the way you are planning to run this country, or maybe not?
Okay. I think
has it played a part?
Yes. My parents were both civil servants. So they were not wealthy people, but they served the Nigerian government, did not have any wealth, but they trained me through school. My father did not leave any property for me when he passed away, but he gave me the most important thing, which is education. With that education, we know what a normal country should look like. And so I cannot apologize for the fact that my parents educated me. If you want to call that privilege, maybe, because there are many people who deserve that type of education, like the 13 million children who are out of school today. They don't have it. So my being educated, that's what I would call it, has shown me what Nigeria should look like in terms of the unity of our country, in terms of the economy of our country, in terms of our standing in the world. And I intend to be a president that will use his education for the benefit of the poor. That's why I am focused on lifting millions of people structurally out of poverty into the middle class.
So it's a good thing you raised the issue of education. I'd like to ask Mrs. Getso her views around education, particularly with reference to the 13 million children that he talked about that are roaming the streets of northern Nigeria. In other words, the Almajiri kids that we hear again and again about.
Actually, the Almajiri case and the end education in the north is something to really look into. And it's not even only in the northern part of the country. We can see that there's a kind of very, very big challenge we're having in Nigeria where the schools are not even available. So actually we have a very, very big plan for even restructuring the educational system, especially the first thing is even putting the schools on ground, because I know in a lot of villages now, a lot of remote areas, you go and you even see there are no schools because it's only the infrastructure. A lot of the infrastructure is not there, and most of the students are even learning under the tree. So we intend to raise the budget of education, as we all know that today's budget we're having in Nigeria is not even up to the standard of UNESCO.
What is the percentage of the national budget that you would devote to education if you
We
are
are thinking of starting with 25%. I think currently it's only 10%, right? So, and which I think most of it is going to the expenditure of the ministry. So we want to make sure that the budget is being increased and will go directly to where it's supposed to go.
So where will you take money from? Because if you're increasing the education budget, you're clearly having to take money from another
You know, initially what we intend to do is when we just come into government is starting with the restructuring. After restructuring Nigeria, definitely the Nigeria and the funding system of Nigeria will not look the way it is today. There will be a lot of opportunities, a lot of all the zones will bring a lot of money into the central. So by restructuring alone, by constitutional restructuring alone, we will be able to make sure that the educational, even almost all the budgets will be raised to the standard that will be the world standard.
Okay, we are going to have to take a quick break. When we come back, we will discuss restructuring and the plan that you've put forward as the way out for this country. Don't go away.
I might want to say one or two things about education.
Okay, if we come back.
Education. Yeah.
Hello? To be for the second one. Okay. Okay. Could you tell the doctor that he is so noisy in my ear I can barely hear them? There's a way to bring it down because it's distracting me from focusing on them. Yeah? He himself. Yeah? He's really loud. Yeah, what is it? Okay. Yes, please, they should bring me some. On a piece of paper, the social media handles, so I can announce them.
Okay, they can't hear me. Okay. Okay.
Welcome back. You are watching The Candidates, a presidential town series brought to you by Nigerian Media and the Nigerian Television Authority with the support of the MacArthur Foundation. We are in conversation with the presidential and vice presidential candidates of the Young Progressives Party, Mr. Kingsley Moghalu and Mrs. Umma Getso. A quick reminder for those watching at home, you can still take part by sending your questions using the social media handles scrolling across the stream. We will do our best to ask the candidates as many audience questions as possible. Now, before the break, we started a conversation on education, which then went into infrastructure. You said you wanted to say a little bit more about what your plan is for education. And then we'll talk about, so.
Well, concerning education, I just wanted to add that today, ASU is on strike. It's a national tragedy, and this is the 13th time we are witnessing this national tragedy since 1988. So roughly every 2 years, our universities shut down. Tell me, how can a country that is governed in this manner make progress?
What do you see as the problem
Yes.
that is causing issues to occur at our university tertiary education
That's
level?
Right. There are two problems concerning the ASU strikes. The first is that our political leaders are not willing to invest in education. They are more willing to invest in paying the salaries, fat salaries of members of the National Assembly. They are more willing to invest in paying salaries of 1 million special assistants and personal assistants to special assistants than to invest in human capital.
So
This country, so investment, it's underfunded.
Okay.
We need to invest much more in education. That's number one. Number two, we need the autonomy of universities. Universities need to be free. The government in most advanced countries does not control universities. So, broadly, the investments we will be making in education are, one, investments in teacher training.
Okay, I want to be able to get Nigerians to understand. Education is broad.
Big.
Primary, secondary,
Yes.
tertiary.
Yes.
So when you talk about investment in education, break it down.
Yes.
Do you believe that government, for example, should fund university education?
Yes.
In other parts of the world, it doesn't always happen.
That's right.
People who go to university work hard, save, or their parents pay for them to go to school. So when you're talking about funding for education, if you could be a bit clearer about which, part of education you're talking about and what your policy is.
That's right.
And it would be good if we take them one by one, starting from primary, secondary to the higher education.
Yes. When I tell you what we want to invest in, I will apply it to all three or anyone.
Mm-hmm.
The first investment is in teacher training. Teachers in primary schools and secondary schools, especially in this country, have not risen in recent years to the quality of where they should be at. And because of that, we see the impact on the quality of the young people coming out of educational institutions in Nigeria. In the universities, we are not investing in enough teachers. At Harvard, the average ratio of student to teacher, or at MIT, is 3 or 4, maximum 9 to 1 professor.
But
in
Harvard
Nigeria,
hang on. Harvard is not funded by the United States government.
No, I know.
So again,
even in state universities,
okay,
the ratios are low. That's what I'm trying to say.
Let me ask you a specific question.
Sure.
If you become president and she becomes vice president,
that's right,
will you be offering free education at all levels for all Nigerians who are able to gain admission?
We will offer free education at primary and secondary school levels, subsidized education at government universities. Private universities will carry their normal fees. That's what we will do. There are many things to fund. If you will let me, I will explain to you exactly how the education sector reform will look like. I said, first of all, that we will fund teacher training. The quality of our teachers matters. We have to make sure that all the teachers in this country are recertified to make sure that they are fit for purpose. They have to be fit to teach our children to be competitive in the 21st century. We will reform the curriculum. The curriculum needs to move more to practical skills, vocational training, technology, entrepreneurship, rather than the very heavily theoretical profile it has today. We will reform how children learn. We will teach our children to learn in a more original manner rather than just cramming notes and regurgitating them at exams. We will encourage them to learn in a more original way that leads them to an innovation economy. Finally, we will invest heavily in educational infrastructure. As Umma said, we have to have in every government institution, there should be no government educational institution in which our children do not have modern learning aids like laptops provided by the government. Yeah. Sure.
Around how you're going to pay for this.
Oh, sure.
Like us to interrogate this a little bit more. But before we do, members of the audience, questions, please. 2, 3 people perhaps, say who you are, and then ask your question, and then we'll come back to the candidates.
Then we have to talk about restructuring.
Yes, sir.
Issue has been given lip service for so many years. My question is, how do you intend to diversify the economy? Because we have sectors like the apiculture, the beekeeping sector, where majority of the honey that we consume in this country is imported. And you're talking of youth unemployment getting to 21 million. There are other sectors that you can unleash into the economy to create jobs. So how do you intend to focus on diversification if you are to be made the president of Nigeria? Thank you.
Sure.
Gentleman in black.
My name is Chido Anuma. I'm the coordinator of the African Center for Media and Information Literacy. My question is, the issue, you will agree, Kingsley, that the issue of unity is important, national integration. And I haven't heard much of that in this campaign. Perhaps next to the security of this country, I think it's one of the major things that is holding the development of this country back. So do you agree with that? And if you do, what do you make of it? What's your perspective in terms of dealing with the issue of national integration? Thank you.
Okay. One final, the lady there, please. Yes. Yes.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mrs. Ibu. I would want to direct this question to Mrs. Umagezu. In the issue of education, being an educationist myself, I would want to know what your plans are to revive the education in Nigeria, one. And then also, I want you to talk broadly about your plans for reviving the Nigerian curriculum. Thank you.
Reviving Nigeria.
I want Mrs. Umagezu to talk broadly about their plan in reviving the Nigerian curriculum to meet up the world standard. Thank you.
Education curriculum.
The education curriculum, yes.
Mm-hmm. All right. So a number of questions there, starting with
National unity.
Well, diversification is sort of the first one.
Okay.
And because we've talked about the economy a bit, perhaps we could start there.
Oh, diversification.
Yes, yes, yes.
Oh, yes. Okay. Now, you see, diversifying the Nigerian economy can be achieved and will be achieved by my administration in many ways. The first thing that is required to diversify the Nigerian economy is the political will to move away from the politics of oil rents and to move Nigeria to an innovation and manufacturing economy. The recycled old politicians have trapped us in the worship of the god of small things, which is crude oil. Who controls it? Who controls the allocation of oil blocks? All that. That is why you find a lot of our politicians paying lip service to diversification, but they spend 4 or 8 years in office, not much of diversification happens. Here's what I'm going to do. Yeah. Yes.
When we're talking diversification, is also, of course, issues of resource control.
Yes.
So I'd like to hear what your position is
Exactly.
regarding resource control.
Yes.
And who takes what.
Sure.
Exactly.
That's what I was coming to when I talked about political will. There is no way you can diversify the economy of this country without constitutional restructuring of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Nigeria, as it is today, is geared towards a monoproduct economy because of the command and control powers at the central government. If you restructure Nigeria to become a true federation based on 6 geopolitical zones or something like that, and the states or the regions have controlled their resources, they will generate their own resources and make a payment of a tax or royalty to the central government of about 30 or 40%. You will now find that the 6 zones will develop economically along the lines of their comparative or competitive advantage, all of which is not oil. Yeah, so restructuring and resource control is essential to breaking the back of oil dominance in Nigerian political economy. Yes.
And proposal on restructuring is very far-reaching.
Yes.
You've talked about breaking the exclusive list, concurrent list, residual list, etc., having regions, banning local governments, very extensive plan.
I didn't even say ban local governments.
Well,
I said there should not be a constitutional tier of government.
They will be under the regional government.
Exactly.
Okay. This are far-reaching reforms that will require constitutional amendments.
Oh, yes.
We all know how difficult that is. And so the question is, how are you, if you get elected into government, there is no indication that your party will have enough people in the National Assembly to be able to push this through. What are your plans for pushing your restructuring agenda if you get elected into office?
Thank you. Restructuring Nigeria is something on which we all know today that a vast majority of Nigerians want. So let's first start from the reality. The reality is that many Nigerians want this country to be constitutionally restructured.
The problem though is that what that restructuring is, it means different things to different people.
But in my proposal, I have explained, I'm the only presidential candidate who has laid out a clear and far-reaching proposal for constitutional restructuring. For me, it's not about talking restructuring just to get votes. And then maybe when you get there, you will not do it.
What I'm saying is we can't make an assumption, therefore, that your proposal will get this buy-in of
But you start with a vision. Okay. That's what a leader does. A leader doesn't decree that everybody must go along with him. A leader lays out a path and makes an argument for it. My proposal for constitutional restructuring is one. We must return Nigeria to a proper federation. We are called the Federal Republic of Nigeria, but we are in reality a unitary state. 2, that federation should be based on geopolitical and geoeconomic zones, not states. That's my argument. The reason for that is predominantly economic, that there is a lot of economic advantage, a lot of economies of scale that come from a regional approach to economic development rather than many states which today are not viable fiscally. We know that about 30 of the 36 states in this country today are not fiscally viable. So, third, I believe that there must be resource control. Fourth, I believe that there should be only 2 tiers of government in the Constitution, and that is the federal government and the subnational units, because in most, if not all federations, that is the way it is. There is no federation I know of in the world that has local government areas as a constitutional tier of government. The only one, which is an exception, is India.
I'm still waiting to hear how you will get the buy-in.
Yes,
to be able
but
to
you
get
talked about
far-reaching constitutional changes
that
you are proposing.
But you talked about different restructuring meaning different things to different people. So I needed to clear that up.
Okay, no problem.
Yes. So because people are always confused about this. So I want to be very clear about what I mean by restructuring so that you won't go and say, YPP candidate talked about restructuring, but like most politicians, he didn't tell us what it meant. I will never be accused of that. Now, the fifth is that there must be a proper separation of religion from public policy in a constitutionally restructured Nigeria. I've sorted that out. Now, let's move to how. When I become president in 2019.
Not if.
When?
When?
Okay.
When I become president. When I become president, here's what I'm going to do. First of all, I will sit down with the leadership of the National Assembly, because Nigeria cannot be restructured. The Constitution cannot be changed or amended without the participation of the National Assembly. We will sit down and have a leadership level discussion where I will lay out my vision with an argument as to why it is good for this country. And I will persuade most of these leaders of the enlightened self-interest of all of us in this vision. It may not be 100% what I want. That's where the negotiation and the discussion comes in. You know, when I'm not going to be a military dictator. But I will present an executive bill based on this vision after discussion with the leadership of the National Assembly. I will set up a high-level presidential commission on constitutional restructuring made up of about 7 very distinguished Nigerians with no political partisanship leanings who will look at previous efforts like the National Conference, like Obasanjo's own attempt, and so on. And, you know, distill this. And then we'll say, look, where do we go from here? We will then present an executive bill. We will go directly to the Nigerian people and make the case for restructuring.
Right.
And so that's
how you intend to do
yeah.
it. Okay, it's still going to take a bit of time.
Yes.
Let's assume, and we're very optimistic,
Yes.
that you manage to get the buy-in that you want.
Yes.
It's still a lengthy process, because apart from the National Assembly, the state houses of assembly have to be involved, etc., etc. Earlier we were talking about education, and you talked about a budget of something like 30%.
Yes.
And when I asked Mrs. Getso about where that money was coming from,
Yes.
she answered that your restructuring agenda is what is going to give you the resources. While you're waiting for your restructuring to take place,
to happen.
how exactly will you be funding these far-reaching reforms that you want to do in education, in the economy, etc., etc.?
There are many sources of revenue in this country, and there is also a monumental amount of waste that is going on in this country. If we stopped all these security votes and put some of that money into healthcare or education, we will do a much better job of governance. If we, I've said it in my proposal, in my manifesto, that within 2 years, I will bring the recurrent expenditure level down to 50% and increase capital spending to 50%.
Will you be sacking people?
Because,
no, not a lot of our recurrent expenditure goes on salaries.
On salaries.
For civil servants.
Good.
Are you going to be sacking people?
Are you suggesting that we should spend the rest of eternity paying civil servants and our economy is sinking?
So the answer is yes.
No. Let me give you the answer. We will reform the civil service. There was a report that talked about the merging or the scrapping of certain bloated, repetitive, wasteful government agencies, no political will to implement it. One thing I'm going to tell you, President Kingsley Moghalu is going to be taking a lot of tough decisions. No, it's not, there's no, you can't make progress otherwise. That's what leadership is about. Go and look at Lee Kuan Yew. Go and look at Mahathir Mohamad. Look at China. People, you don't move by
Just so we are clear, you've talked about creating jobs.
Absolutely.
And here you seem to be talking about sacking people.
Let me tell you what will happen to the public sector. No, let me tell you what will happen to the public sector. You're not going to kick people out into the street. But we need to rationalize the public sector and make sure that, one, it's productive, and two, people who are redundant can be moved into other areas. I intend, as president, to recruit 1.5 million new policemen and women for the Nigerian police force. Train them, equip them, and have them recruited. For a modern 21st century police, we are 200 million people, and we have 300 and something thousand police officially. 1/3 of them are guarding VIPs in their homes. Another 70,000 are alleged to be ghost workers. You have to invest in securing this country. So you can move some people from other aspects of the public service to security services and train them. That's one way to go about it. Some people, if you want to let them go, you don't kick them out into the street. You help them access a new way of livelihood, either with a package, an exit package, or you direct them to the venture capital fund to help them start new businesses. So there are many innovative ways of modernizing and preventing wasteful recurrent expenditure in this country.
And there was a question asked not too long ago about the question of national unity.
Yes.
So perhaps you can talk a little bit about that, and then we can go into issues around security. I will also take a few questions from people at home.
Sure.
Yes.
The most defining element of the Moghalu-Getso administration will be the emphasis on foundations. We will build a united Nigeria. We will heal this country and build a nation. How do you do that? You do it, first of all, by laying out a national ambition around which we can all unite, an ambition that unites all of us rather than our spending time on our differences. We spend time on uniting to achieve a particular goal. Why is it that whenever we go to play soccer, you don't remember whether you're Igbo or Hausa or Yoruba? That's a uniting thing. So if we had a national ambition that all of us could identify with, that becomes...
What would it be?
That national ambition...
I assume you've thought it through, yes.
Oh, yes, I have. That national ambition would be as follows: that we will be the most powerful black nation on earth, that we will have an economy that is built on entrepreneurship and hard work, that we will be one people with a goal to make economic progress and live. There must be peace, security, justice, equity, and the rule of law. These are the elements of a national ambition on which we can all agree. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is by running an inclusive government without sacrificing merit. Okay, because in every part of Nigeria, you have competent people. So we will find them everywhere. Nobody will complain. A federal character is not being respected, but everybody will feel included in my government. So there will be nobody complaining of marginalization in a Kingsley Moghalu presidency. It's not going to happen.
Okay. Sorry,
yes.
In addition to that,
yes.
We intend to do some artificial things that are created in the present day-to-day. When you see the indigenization of a thing, I could remember when we were in primary school, we don't used to have such kind of things. So the government have put a kind of weight where it's not supposed to. So when you come to filling of forms, if it's national or international, whatsoever, in Nigeria now we've restricted ourselves on religion and region. So our government, by the grace of God, we're going to remove all those indigenous of a thing and the religious statute of a thing. We're just going, when you're a Nigerian, you'll be 100% a Nigerian or be considered a Nigerian.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'd like to call on someone talking about inclusion. Mr. Richard Ezekiel has questions to ask, and we're going to need our interpreter, sign language interpreter, to tell us what he's asking. Okay. Right.
Okay, thank you so much for the honor given to me. My name is Richard Ezekiel and I'm a deaf. With all the submissions I'm seeing here, I've checked and see that there is no plan for persons with disabilities, especially in Nigeria. When you look at it, we pay tax, our money is used to run the government, and there is nothing for persons with disabilities.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to address that question head on.
Yes, I will quickly take two more from social media, and then we can address them together. So, question one from Awe Ima, who says, if you divert the money for social investment, does that mean that all the 500,000 Empower volunteers will be out of work and essentially you'll be sacking them? Another person, Baba Nasidi, says, I'm convinced that you are able to match the highest office. However, on the NNPC group issue, you promised to sell it on NSE Nigeria, why not manage, overhaul, or restructure? So it seems to be suggesting that you say you're going to sell the NNPC and
partially privatized.
Yes, and then we have another question about how you solve the power problem and what measure you put in place to choose the people that are going to work with you. So we'll leave those three and maybe start with the issue of diversity and inclusion.
Yes, let me deal with the issue of disabilities. Now, it's a real shame that public governance in this country utterly has no regard for prioritizing the needs of people with disabilities. This is against the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which Nigeria is a signatory to. My government will begin to put that legal obligation into practice with practical policy to help people with disabilities. Let me give you an example. When I was deputy governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, the Committee of Governors sat down and discussed the issue of persons living with disabilities. And we agreed and directed all banks in Nigeria to create facilities for access, physical access, for persons with disabilities to access banking halls and banking transactions. So that shows already that I am conscious of this.
Yeah, but
now,
is it in your manifesto? I mean,
yes,
what
course.
did you say specifically in your manifesto about people with disabilities?
Yes. Now, for people with disabilities, we will bring in experts. I'm not an expert on disabilities. I cannot be an expert on everything. The important thing is that the Ministry of Social Welfare under my presidency will set up a very, very strong disabilities policy unit, which will set out regulations and support for persons with disabilities in this country to access all public spaces. So we will make sure of that. Okay. We will support them. We will invest in creating the right environment physically in terms of infrastructure and legally for persons with disabilities.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to take a quick break.
Sure.
Please stay with us. Don't go away.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's okay. We have another hour. Yeah.
Have 1 hour.
Yeah. So many questions. Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I'm so sorry. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Good. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you get back, you continue with those, right? You continue with
I've done a few. So
your Twitter, from Twitter. Are you good? Are you good?
I'm good. Welcome back. You are watching The Candidates, brought to you by Nigerian Media and Nigerian Television Authority, and we are also on TVC and Wazobia Television. We are doing this with the support of the MacArthur Foundation. Now, before the break, we were talking to the presidential and vice presidential candidates of the YPP, and we'd started a conversation around unity and trying to heal the wounds of Nigeria. And Mrs. Getso talked about the abolition of probably things like religion and ethnicity on forms as a way of building indigenship and all that. And yet, when I look at the manifesto of your party, you talk about zoning political office. A bit of a contradiction, because as early as last year, April, you were unequivocal about the fact that you didn't believe in zoning of political offices. What happened? Have you changed your mind? Or is it a question of your party saying something else, you believe something else?
Well, let me tell you, first of all, that the party's constitution had been made before I joined the party.
So you joined a party that has principles and beliefs that were contrary to your own?
No, not at all.
Okay.
The party is re-examining some of these issues, and we will have a convention to address this particular issue and make sure that there is no difference of view. You see,
it's a bit problematic though for Nigerians, because if you're presenting a party with a certain manifesto,
yes,
with certain beliefs,
yes,
and you want to be president,
yes,
these are the beliefs that are determining whether people support you or not.
I think,
and yet, what you seem to be saying is, we want you to elect us on the basis of our manifesto, but actually, we may get into office and change
I think there's an issue of interpretation here.
Okay, please explain.
I think there's an issue of interpretation.
Okay.
The YPP is not talking about
like you did not understand what I was trying to say.
Yes, you can.
No, I'm talking specifically about what was said in the manifesto.
In the manifesto, yes.
Yes, specifically.
Yes. Can you read it?
I can try and find it here,
yes,
because I think I've got it somewhere here. Just give me a minute, please.
Sure.
I will find it. Right, under the heading Indivisibility of the Nigerian Polity and the subheading of the party's mission, the party said, shall also promote geopolitical balancing as a fundamental principle of power sharing in the country. That's a direct quote from your manifesto.
That is not zoning.
Then you also said, hang on, the party shall uphold the principle of power shift in our party and at all level, the manifesto added. The party further espoused that it will apply the zoning and rotational principles in the sharing of political power at all levels of government and within the party.
Good. Now, I have said that the party is looking at its constitution. I joined the party because I
So we admit it is in your manifesto. Let's accept that it is in there.
I mean, you've read it out.
Okay.
Yes, but it is a living document. It's a document that's subject to change. My vision does not support zoning. I believe in meritocracy. The party, since I joined the party, remember that I only became the presidential candidate of the party in September. Life hasn't ended. We're going to be taking another look at our constitution, and we'll be making the necessary amendments. So I don't see any inconsistency, because the party, since I became a presidential candidate and I laid out this vision, remember, I am the leader of the party, having become its presidential candidate. So a leader can say to his colleagues, look, this thing was in our constitution, but we need to take a second look at it. That process is ongoing. It's not a problem at all.
Not imposing your views on the party.
No, I'm not imposing at all. But we have all, in fact, agreed that we need to take a second look at this. So there's no daylight between me and the party at all.
Okay, I want to open this up a little bit more, get people to, yes, the gentleman in black, the one in yellowish, and then the lady in the black scarf, and then another lady somewhere, I think, or the gentleman over there. Yes. And please try and speak up.
I'm the president of the Young Youth Network for Good Leadership in Nigeria. I want to draw the attention.
Can you actually hear him properly? Because it's a little bit faint. Okay.
My question is just simple. Will you give Nigerians light? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Light.
Power, yes.
Power.
The question of power.
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Likisu Aliladun. I'm a civil servant. I would like to ask Mr. Moghalu, please, what are you going to do differently in terms of corruption? Knowing that corruption is a very vast matter. Yeah. What are you going to do differently to tackle corruption? Secondly, about our judicial system. Knowing that we have lots of convicts in the prisons, everywhere it's crowded, and crimes are being committed on a daily basis. What are you going to do to take care of such issues? And my third question goes to Hajia Umar. What are you going to do about our children roaming the streets, child abuse, early marriages, and girl-child education?
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you. The gentleman over here, yeah. We'll do the three, then we'll come back.
Good evening. My name is Haruna Kubanjo. I'm a governance expert in Abuja. My question is, I'm going to ask a question on the issue of education and power. Issues have been raised on it, and I have discovered the presidential candidate of YPP, Moghalu, has been giving us long-term strategies. And what we needed in Nigeria today, we need short-term strategies that will keep, once you, if by God's grace, you become president of Nigeria, what are your short-term strategies in terms of power and education? And you've not been making recognize of institutions. You have not been talking about institutions. Like in the education, you've not been talking about the BEC. And because your powers as a president, as federal government is limited in terms of basic education, because the states are there. So you should be talking about institutions. Then that also leads me to when somebody was raising the issue, somebody has a question about what do you do to the money market and all these things. You see, we need to look at the existing institution. You made mention of that you are going to set up a fund. The only difference I've seen is the issue of no collateral. But you can also do it to the existing funds we have instead of creating more institutions.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay, so there are like about three things there: corruption, power. Again, I think we must institutions, but we must also try and see if we can take on the issue of security, because that is also very critical. Okay.
So that Umar can have an opportunity.
Yes, yes.
First of all, on corruption, the first step that my government will take towards fighting corruption is to tackle the root causes of corruption. The value system is broken in this country, and that is what is feeding corruption. So it doesn't matter what you do at the surface if you don't address the root. The fact that Nigeria does not have a philosophical foundation which requires a value system to turn Nigeria into a great country, a value system that all of us agree on, and we, the citizens, can all agree. It is all of us working together that will make this country work. Now, so that's number one. We're going to include the study of ethics in our schools, especially at primary and secondary levels, because that teaches children right and wrong.
But while you're grooming young children and teaching them and changing their mindset, what do you do with the existing problem?
The next thing that we will do is to bring transparency into governance processes. That is a proactive approach to fighting corruption. We will make sure that contract awards and budget processes are far more transparent. From the very first budget of my government, the budget will be subjected to a forensic audit before it is taken to the National Assembly. That means that we will weed out any budget padding. Yeah, that's the next thing is that we will impartially enforce accountability for acts of corruption. The fight against corruption will begin inside my government.
Will you be looking at things retroactively, or would it be a question of drawing a line and saying going forward from the time I'm in government? In other words, will you be investigating people you've taken over from if you become president?
Now, if any crimes have been committed under the law and they don't have any statute of limitations, the law must take its course. We have a judiciary. So you're not going to stop the work of the judiciary. That's a matter for the judiciary. But my approach to fighting corruption is forward-looking. It is to create a new environment where you reduce corruption markedly, not an approach that focuses on, looking to the past, whereby people can say you're witch hunting. I don't think that is the real issue. The issue is to create systems that make corruption difficult. And if you are found to be corrupt, that there's the political will to punish you. Not to be talking about fighting corruption, but members of your political party are corrupt, nothing happens to them. But if you're in the opposition, it's easy to target you.
Power.
So, yeah, power. Then when we come to power, here's my approach to power. First, the decentralization of the national grid. A lot of these questions come back to restructuring. But let's not dwell on that. The decentralization of the national grid is...
So mini grids spread across the country.
Spread across the country. Right. That will be our approach to power. Using hydroelectric and fossil energy, focusing them more on industrial production areas like Lagos, like Kano, like Aba, or Onitsha, or Ogun State, some of those kinds of places. The reason is that if you make sure that these parts of Nigeria have 24-hour electricity, a lot of things will happen. The prices of goods will come crashing down because...
Let me try and understand that, because I'm a little bit confused. The current power policy of the current regime also has a bit of a mix. It talks about hydro, it talks about renewable, it has timelines for getting about 30% of our power from renewables. And they've started even talking about decentralizing power as well. I'd like to know how your policy differs from what obtains at the moment.
How my policy differs is, number one, the focus on industrial areas as a priority of power infrastructure. Number two, the focus on renewable energy for the normal population. I want to move Nigeria's power policy more towards renewable energy than to fossil
What sort
energy.
of percentage are you looking at?
What percentage of
Yes, of our power mix will be renewable.
Yeah, we're mixed, but I think that at least 50 to 60% of Nigeria's power should come from renewable energy. And I think that's very easy to, it's possible.
And the time frame for this?
Well, I have a 4-year mandate. So, you see, I don't like to make unrealistic promises.
So you're basically saying everything you promise in your policy are things that you think you can achieve within your first term in office?
Within my term of office, yes. That I can promise you. I don't like to make flowery promises, but I want to tell you that it's not even a question of making promises. It's a question of, I have a plan for Nigeria. That plan is in this book. Build, innovate, and grow. I'm the only presidential candidate to lay out a comprehensive plan for governance and leadership, for nation building, for the economy,
it's like
and for foreign affairs.
You're trying to sell your book on my program. Now, I want to turn to Mrs. Umar. I'd like to talk about security and what is happening in the northeast of Nigeria, but also increasingly the northwest in places like Zamfara and the general issues that we have. What are your thoughts regarding the Boko Haram insurgency and the fight that Nigeria has had on its hand for the last decade or so?
Thank you very much, Kajeja. I would like to start by appreciating our security forces, including the army and the police force. Because the situation we are today in Nigeria, tackling the security issue, it's not only their own doing. The politicians, individuals like me and you, everybody is part of fighting security in Nigeria. But the main challenge we're having, I saw a lot of them posting on social media, especially the military men, they are not well equipped. They don't have resources. They are not well fed. So how can you expect a hungry man to go into the battlefield with no resources, with no equipment, no training, and we all know that these Boko Haram have sophisticated weapons.
So if you even match, I always like salute the courage of Nigerian army, because I'm very sure a white man can never go into war with only 6 or 12 bullets on his gun. And the guns we're even using today in Nigeria, despite that there are a lot of news going on in the social media, there are a lot of huge budgets going out about purchasing of arms and whatsoever. But still we know that there are a lot of military men that send us videos of what's happening, the actual happening over there. So to be candid, there's a kind of something, an undisclosed information to the general public.
So what do you think is responsible for the fact that the army is not well equipped, like you said, is not getting the resources it requires? What in your view is going on?
All Nigeria need is a dedicated leader, somebody that's out there and willing to face the reality of this country. Because I always say this, there are a lot of things that are not well spelled in this country. So if we at all vote for somebody or vote for Professor Kingsley Moghalu, definitely there will be a very, very positive change, because he is a person that's in this race, not for other personal gains or personal interests. He's here to see that he bring Nigeria out of the hole we are today. So all we need about fighting corruption is just getting somebody very, very patriotic with the willingness to do it.
Okay, now quickly, the issue of, you've talked about the army and how you admire them and you think they are operating under very difficult circumstances. But we've also heard stories of corruption in the military.
Yes.
And so, yeah, if we...
I want to be very clear. I want to be very clear. We've read the report of the International Security Studies Association that claimed, and I believe that those claims are well-founded, because if we look at the results in the field, versus the billions of dollars that are being voted for equipment in the Nigerian army. We took recently $1 billion out of our excess crude oil account, and yet we see Boko Haram technically degrading the Nigerian army. I think this is something is very wrong, and clearly part of the problem is corruption in the military.
Okay, but it is important to point out that that figure that you called, not all of that money has been allocated yet. Has been voted, but it has not been allocated yet. So we need to be clear.
That's fine. But in the past 3 years, we have seen a lot of increase in defense spending. Is that not so? We have not seen concomitant results in the field. Okay. The result is that there is a reversal against the Nigerian army, and that's why I say that the Boko Haram has technically degraded the Nigerian army, and that's something is wrong.
Okay, so something is wrong. What are you going to do to fix it? If
Good.
You become
Let me tell you what I'm going to do about it. First, as president, I am going to work with the army to change their intelligence operations. We have to focus
on the
on
same army that is corrupt.
You can change the leadership.
Right. So I want you to be absolutely clear. That's what you're saying.
Let's remember.
Your intention is you will change the
as president of Nigeria, I will be the commander-in-chief.
Yes.
So you have the responsibility, not just the authority, to secure the lives and properties of Nigerians. That's going to be my first task. And whatever I need to do to make sure that Nigerian lives are safe in the northeast or the northwest or wherever in this country, I will have the political will to do it, including fighting corruption in the military at the leadership levels if that is what is required. So I want to be very clear about that. Secondly, I think that the whole national security apparatus in this country needs to be made much more professional.
What does that mean?
What I mean is that the leadership of the national security institutions in this country is skewed in one direction. Most of them come from one part of the country. Most of them come from one religion. What does that tell me?
Okay.
I want to be very clear, please. Yeah. What it tells me is that there is a far more stronger interest in regime protection than in protecting the Nigerian people.
Okay, so let's be absolutely clear, Mr. Moghalu, about what you're saying.
Yes.
When you say most of the security apparatus in this country, and I'm assuming you're talking in totality, and you've looked at the numbers in totality, what are you saying? What religion are they? What section are they from? You can't make an allegation like that without backing it up.
Thank you. Now, listen, let me tell you that there are about 17 or 16 national security agencies. When you talk about the police force, you talk about the state security services, you talk about, you know, several civil defense and so on and so forth. Several of these things.
So you're talking about the leadership here?
The leadership, please.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I'm just talking about the leadership.
Okay.
Who head them, those who head them.
Right.
So when you look at it, you don't see, what you see is a certain tilt in a certain direction. What this says is that there is an implicit assumption that for whatever reason, those security agencies have to be headed by, we saw what happened with the SSS.
But you're not really still saying what you want to say. Because
no,
I think you are saying, so let me say it for you, and then you confirm if what you're saying is true. You're saying the current government of President Muhammadu Buhari is appointing Muslims and Northerners mostly as heads of government. Okay, just so let's just so that we say it and we have the conversation.
That's what is the reality. That's the fact. I'm saying that the Buhari administration is not making security leadership appointments on the basis of professionalism. And I can justify it. I can justify what I'm saying.
Okay, so, but for someone who said you want to make appointments based on merit, you're making a big deal of the fact that you say is only a certain section that has, because he could argue he actually appointed on merit, and that's why you don't have that balance that you are looking for.
No, he said he appoints people based on those he can trust. That's what the president said. His government appointments from the beginning were very heavily skewed, and when he was challenged, look, the secretary to the government of the federation is from where? The national security advisor is from where? The chief of staff, let me finish. The chief of staff is from where?
No. Secretary to the federal government is actually a Christian. So it's important that because, you know,
please, there's no need splitting hairs. All three come from the same geopolitical zone. I, as president, will not do that. My SGF, my NSA, and chief of staff will come from 3 different political zones. They will never come, all 3 in the presidency, come from one zone. It's not going to happen.
All right. So that's appointment. What else are we looking at in terms of the because there's the Boko Haram issue in the northeast. There's the herder-farmer conflict. There's the rustling of cattle and the banditry, which is taking place increasingly in the northwest. I'd like to hear your thoughts on those particular problems.
My thoughts on these things is that national security is far more complex, as we have seen in reality. The Buhari administration has focused mostly on Boko Haram. And then we saw that the herdsmen conflict metastasized into a huge thing. Now you have bandits attacking Zamfara, Katsina, President Buhari's home state. The governor just said recently that the state is surrounded by bandits. So the security of lives and property in this country has broken down.
Okay, I'm going to have to stop you because I have to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll carry on talking.
Nigeria. Funny place.
Very funny place. I mean, a real place. Because people don't want to face reality. That's the challenge.
Oh, yes. Sure. Yes, absolutely. Yes.
From who?
The MacArthur Foundation.
I need to check my glasses. Hold on.
Okay, here is this thing you are leaning too much to this side.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think she just said like a reminder. You guys have talked about it before.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Are you done with these questions?
Yeah, he's answered this already, so I can't go back.
Strike off the ones
Yeah.
that he's answered.
He's also answered this. He's answered this. He's answered all these things. Okay, he hasn't done this. So we'll do this. He has answered this. He has answered this. A lot of them have been taken on, but I think people are not listening. Okay. All right.
So, Kadria, yeah, I'll just wrap up on what I was saying.
On the hurdles.
Yeah,
We'll come back to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have it here. Yeah, I don't have it. Welcome back. You are watching The Candidates, brought to you by Diversification Media and the Nigerian Television Authority with the support of the MacArthur Foundation. And we are speaking to the presidential and vice presidential candidates of the YPP. Now, before the break, we started a conversation around the issues of security in Nigeria. And we talked about the Northeast, and we started talking about some of the issues facing the Northwest and how you intend to tackle some of those issues. I would like us to carry on where we stopped, yes.
Yeah. So I was saying that the argument by President Buhari that most of his appointments, in trying to justify his appointments after criticisms of sectionalism, and he said, you appoint those you trust. He is saying implicitly that after having been a military head of state of this country, after having been a general in the army with a long career in this country, coming back as a civilian president, the only people he can trust are people from a particular geographical area.
Okay,
that
so
is not a
you
statement.
made that point, but
Yes,
it'd be good to
point.
actually talk to Nigerians about what you will do differently.
What I will do is as follows. I will govern Nigeria as president, working with the people of Nigeria, not on the basis of nepotism, not on the basis of tribalism, not on the basis of religious irredentism, but these 4 offices will help me govern this country. 1, the Office of National Strategy. 2, the Office of Risk Management. 3, the Office of Performance Management. 4, the Office of Human Capital Development. These 4 offices will be part of the presidency, and that will help me ensure that our presidency will be effective, will achieve the goals we have set for it in 4 years, will manage the risks that could prevent us from achieving those goals and from not achieving what we said.
I'm still not clear in practical terms how this will help address the problems in a place like Zamfara, which is facing serious, banditry.
On security, we are going to reform the control of our borders. When you appoint professional leaders of security based on knowledge, not based on where they come from, you will have better security in Nigeria than we have today. When you secure our borders Our borders are not secure.
No, hang on, Mr. Moghalu. Not to keep interrupting you,
Sure.
but there seems to be almost an implication there that the insecurity issues we have are foreign. Are from outside Nigeria, and that if we secure our borders, suddenly Nigeria will become a land of milk and honey. And actually, we happen to know that the issues we face, despite maybe not wanting to admit it, is caused by our local people. Certainly in a place like Zamfara, where I come from, it is our children, our people who are causing the havoc.
Border security is only one of several, a mix of security issues.
Okay, so I was specifically asking about the trouble in the northwest.
In the northwest.
Yes, the banditry, the rustling.
The banditry is...
And then I also then want you to talk about the farmer-herder clashes as well.
Okay, the banditry in the northwest is caused fundamentally by the fact that Nigeria is not in control of its territory. That's what I'm saying. The Nigerian government today is not in control of the territorial integrity of this country. That's why you have banditry in Zamfara and Katsina. That's why you have the herdsmen. That's why you have the Boko Haram. Of all these, the Boko Haram are operating partly across borders. President Buhari told us that the herdsmen conflict is caused by people who came from Libya. If that is the case, how did they cross our borders?
Okay.
Then the thing in Zamfara, let me finish. We don't have an effective police force. That's part of the problem.
So for you, this issue is essentially a policing issue. There are no other underlying issues the way you are presenting it.
In the case of the herdsmen, there are underlying issues like desertification of the north, which is putting pressure on herders to move southward in terms of looking for grazing lands. But that still doesn't excuse killing people in their villages and taking over their farmlands. My government will deal with the underlying issues of desertification in the north. We're going to bring in innovation agriculture that will turn all those northern desert areas into farmlands. And so, oh yes, it was done in Israel. We will do it in Nigeria. So it's not impossible. It is the incompetence of our political leaders that makes it look as if some of these problems are so huge that they cannot be solved. I will bring competence, I will bring vision, I will bring political will. President Buhari has not been able to bring the herdsmen to order. He told us that there's nothing he can do but pray. And I said, we did not elect you to be a prayer warrior. We elected you to secure our lives.
Let me be quite specific with this question.
Sure.
In terms of the issue of a section of the country, in this case the north, that has high levels of poverty, do you see a correlation at all between insecurity and poverty, like some people say, or not? And maybe I see you nodding your head, Mrs. Getso. I'd like your take on that.
We all know that a hungry man is an angry man. And if you see, why do you think all these insurgents and all these challenges are coming from the far north? It's because the north is not, it's not ripe to feed the people around here. You're surprised if I tell you that most of these people going to do this kidnapping or some kind of things, they are just doing it to feed their families, because the country has not carried them along to give them something, a return to them being Nigerian citizens. To be candid, Nigerian citizens are so very deprived of their own right of being citizens. And when I always talk of patriotism, Nigeria has taken too much from its citizens that the citizens are not even feeling they are part of the country. Because if you see a typical man, I can remember when we were in secondary school, there's this thing, you see people, when there's a riot or whatsoever, you see people breaking the government property and calling it Kayan Baba Gomnati. Because people are feeling like the government is even an enemy to them. So if at all today our leaders will create a balance between the citizens and the government, or bridge the gap between the rulers and the rules. So definitely you see that Nigerians will have this sense of patriotism, feel like the country is giving them something in return, and they will work towards paying back to that country, to their country again. Let's take the example of military men and for our armed forces that have been killed along the line, or they have been injured and they are no longer useful now in the society. What has the government offered to their families? So I'm very sure they have this in their mind. If I sacrifice my life today, in the cause of, as in making my country a better place or guarding the lives of others, what's my destiny tomorrow? So to be candid, this whole thing, they are going hand in hand. The country, the poverty and the insecurity are all things they're all related.
Okay. Now let me take one, maybe two last questions, because we're running out of time very quickly. There's a gentleman in the hat right at the back. I want to go to, no, sir. Yes, you, stand up, yes. Please come. Then let's get two more people quickly behind him so that we are quick. We are running out of time. Yes, please. Quickly, your name and your question. And the gentleman right at the back, that gentleman there. Please stand up, sir. And then you, finally, just for. Hold on. Yeah, so, okay. Start again, please, quickly.
Closer to the microphone.
Move closer.
To the microphone.
Okay. I would like to take you back on the question on corruption. The first question is, I want to ask are you corrupt? Simple. And the reason why I ask this question is, I stumbled on an article on the internet. I was researching about you before I come here. So in 2014, when the then CBN governor, your ex-boss, was sacked by Goodluck Jonathan, you granted an interview with the Independent newspaper. And in that interview, you seem to have endorsed that suspension by the then president. And you cited in the interview, you said the then CBN governor has assumed a role of a political activist. I'm not sure if I got it correctly.
Yeah, okay.
So I want to know if, in retrospect, after you've left power and we've seen all the revelations, because the then CBN governor was suspended, he said, because he exposed corruption in the central bank. And you seem to have endorsed that suspension. I want to know if you still believe in that.
Thank you. The
secondly,
person, no, I can only take one. I literally have 10. I have 10 minutes. A few more people want to talk. Thank you very much. Sorry.
My name is Usman Jahun. I'm a lawyer. Now my question is still on security, and so I would like to know your take on the fact that some section of the society, say Hamza Al-Mustafa, for example, recently said that the security in the northwest and the northeast is largely due to the fact that there is economic economic well-being potentials in those areas. And so do you believe in that? What's your take on that?
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir. Quickly, please. And then we'll come back to you.
All right, my name is Akin Alufa. I'm an educationist, and I'm from Ekiti State as well. I just would like to ask specifically what strategies do you have in place to square up against those big candidates of the PDP and the APC.
Okay.
Given the fact that, first of all, you do have structures on ground, and again to convince us that this is not just an opportunity for you to look for the opportunity.
We've had the question. We've had the question, yes. Final person, please.
Yeah.
Yes.
My name is Mustafa Said. I'm a development enthusiast and commentator. I'm sorry, I'm going to take us back. When you were talking about your policies for the education sector, you forgot about the fact that in Nigeria, I think apart from the federal government colleges that we have, secondary schools are under the state governments.
Okay.
As well as primary schools. Now, if anything else, 2015 to 2019 should have taught us what can be done in Nigeria and how it can be done and why it is going to fail. Mr. Kingsley Moghalu, you are running for the office of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Should you win and then no any other candidate from YPP emerge as governor, how can you implement these educational policies, given that you don't have one single state governor to help you achieve the change of policy at secondary and primary school level? That is my question.
Quick questions, Quick. The CBN issue is important because it's about institutional autonomy and independence,
Yes, absolutely. Now, concerning the CBN issue, is going back to history. What happened was a simple disagreement of principle over not the substance of the issues of that day, of the time. No, it was just a disagreement over approach. That's it. And those differences have been resolved. Yes? Yes. Yes.
And I quote, you said the lesson that can be drawn from it is the limits of central bank independence.
Yes.
There's a very thin line between central bank independence and political posturing. You seem to imply in that quote that independence has limits. And in a country where we talk about weak institutions and the fact that we need to grow strong institutions in order to ensure that politicians do not railroad those institutions, it's a bit odd that you talked about limits to independence.
Let me clarify.
Okay.
The quote itself tells you what the issue was about. The issue was not about whether I was endorsing corruption or not. Somebody asked a question. Of course I'm not corrupt. If I was corrupt, I wouldn't be running for president of Nigeria with the zeal and the passion and the kind of campaign I have run across this country, the sacrifice I have made. So of course, that question doesn't even begin to apply to me.
But as president, will you be limiting the independence of the central bank?
No,
because that is what you seem to be saying in that interview.
Please. I believe wholeheartedly. In fact, my criticism of the central bank today is that it has lost its independence. So obviously I believe in the independence of the central bank. And the achievements that we recorded under the leadership of Sanusi, both in areas of economic policy, in managing inflation down to 8%, the achievements we recorded in stabilizing the banking sector after the global financial crisis, in which I led the implementation of those reforms, those achievements were recorded because of the independence of the bank. There was a specific situation at the time, period. There was a disagreement about approach, not about the substance. And that disagreement has since been discussed and settled between me and my brother and my friend. People may wish to go into all that,
but hang on. You understand why? Because the issue was not a private issue. It wasn't an issue between you and your brother. It was an issue that was a national issue.
Then I took a position.
Yes.
I took a position of principle.
Which was what?
Which was, at the time, from the quote you said,
that central bank independence is limited.
That I felt at the time that we were going into a little bit of political activism. That's all. It was a matter of interpretation.
Okay, let's move quickly to the other questions that were asked. The gentleman who says you don't have anyone in public office, if you are voted, you don't have governors.
So he said we don't have government, but we do have gubernatorial candidates all over. I'm very sure even APC today doesn't have 100% governors in all across in the 36 states. Exactly. So you can't say, you can't predict. It's like you're making a predictions. So how many?
We have over 300 candidates. 16 candidates for governor, 22 candidates for Senate, 55 candidates for House of Reps, and nearly 200 candidates, or more than 100 and something candidates for state houses of assembly. Many of them will win. Definitely. Therefore, the YPP will be part of the structure of the government of this country in 2019. Let there be no doubt about it. So we are a real political party, a movement of real people on the ground. The YPP is not a special purpose vehicle for anybody's presidential ambition. We are not a briefcase political party. We are not an internet political party. We're a real movement with real followers. And you will see it when the election results come.
Okay, so there was a question about how you're going to fight the two major parties. And I want to add to that very, very quickly a question from an audience member, a guy called Oluhemse Augustine Ahigbe. He said, why did you not work with other parties to produce a single alternative candidate to give yourselves a better chance of taking on essentially these two big parties that we're looking at?
Well, first of all, I want to be very, very clear that we will defeat President Muhammadu Buhari at the ballot box in February.
Okay.
Let's please, I want to be very clear. Please. The reason is simple.
Okay.
The reason is simple. People are tired of the old recycled politicians in this country. So APC will go, and the PDP is not an option because they too have failed. You don't jump from frying pan to fire. What Nigeria needs now is a modern, technocratically competent presidency with a world view of transformation.
Okay.
That's what we need. We don't need old recycled politicians.
And if you lose, will
Now,
you accept the results? Because you do have a history of not accepting results of elections.
No, you're wrong. You are wrong. I tell you, and I put it to you, as the lawyers would say, you are flat out wrong. If you are part of a process, of an electoral process, of any sort, even a straw poll like what you were referring to, and you have reasons to doubt the integrity of that process, even people who contest a normal election, if the election was rigged, they go to court and they have a right to do so, and they can reject the result. Is that not so?
Okay, so this is basically what you're saying. If these elections happen and you lose, what happens?
Listen, we will, the judgment of the people is what we are presenting ourselves for. If you lose an election fair and square, you would not be the first person to lose it. If you lose an election due to mago-mago, you have every right to reject it and walk away from the process. Period. You cannot deny me that right. The exercise you're referring to was a political assassination attempt. The whole purpose of it was to terminate my candidacy because some forces were threatened by that candidacy. Okay. And that result came about by processes that were totally untransparent. And I have every right to say there was a little bit of untransparent, not even a little. I can go into details if you want.
But you went through with it. I mean, there were candidates who had issues.
It doesn't matter at what point you discover that a process is not transparent.
Okay, let me quickly turn to her because we have very little time.
You have the right, as a matter of principle, to say this election has been manipulated, and you have the right to reject it.
With only 3 minutes to go, I'd like to turn to the only person, or I think the only vice presidential candidate that is female.
The first.
I think you're the first.
Certainly
yes,
the
okay.
first. Yeah.
What does this mean for you as a woman, you know, standing and running as a vice president to Mr. Moghalu? Do you see gender as a big issue in terms of policy very quickly? Because we have very little time left.
Well, this stands as a kind of opportunity given to me to bring out what I have for Nigerians. It's a kind of lifetime dream. I've always dreamed of a way to see how I can impact the lives of a typical Nigerian. And it's not about gender only, but it is still about gender, because according to Professor Kingsley Moghalu's book, he's going to give us 50-50 gender equity in his government. So this is an opportunity.
He said that's the ambition. He said it's an aspirational target,
yes.
You said.
I said we're aiming for 50-50 gender equity in the cabinet appointments.
Yes.
My cabinet will have one man, one woman.
So it's not aspirational, it's a commitment to 50-50.
It's a commitment. As far as the cabinet is concerned.
It's a commitment.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. So, of course, this might look at gender because it's not even only about gender. We're looking at giving people that have what to offer to this country an opportunity to come forward and help us build a real nation, because we know that Nigeria today is not being real in all its dealings.
Okay. Thank you very much. Sadly, we've run out of time and have to leave it here. Thank you very much, Mr. Moghalu and Mrs. Getso, for making yourself available to Nigerians. The next edition of The Candidates will take place, God willing, in exactly 7 days at the same time, 7 to 9 p.m. It will be a live show once more, and we'll be talking to the presidential and vice presidential candidates of the ruling All Progressives Party, the APC. Join us as we provide a platform for Nigerians to ask the president and vice president questions on their performance in office and why they deserve to be re-elected. Please join us as you did today, and we all wish you a very good evening.